Now, celebrating all things cool in Jacksonville, a local show with a spotlight on the 904, featuring amazing stories from every neighborhood. This is River City Live.
Welcome to Bridges of Hope, Martin Luther King Jr. Day on River City Live. Now, with today having such a special meaning, we thought we'd do things a bit differently on the show today.
Absolutely. I have always had a passion to learn more about our community, and I think we'll all take away some really great lessons today.
And what I love about this gig, learning about our community, but also getting to share those nuggets when I can. Now, everyone knows about St. Augustine, the First Coast, Pirates, etc., but how many know about Lincolnville and its history?
So Rance and our producer Vaughn and myself, we all went on a historical field trip to the Lincolnville Museum to learn more about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s visit to St. Augustine. Take a look. Regina, we couldn't look around these images and these exhibitions that you have here without seeing one very iconic historical figure, and that's Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, he could have been anywhere in the country really leading this charge, but he spent a lot of time with his team in St. Augustine. Can you tell me about his time here?
Sure. Well, Dr. King was invited to come here. That Dr. Robert Hailing and some other members of our community, they have been in the struggle for a while and somewhat unsuccessful in getting the kind of traction they needed with the NAACP within the local community. So they found out that SCLC was meeting in Orlando. So they drove to Orlando and met with Dr. King and invited him to come back. And it just happened to coincide with the 400th anniversary for the birthday of the city of St. Augustine. So we had this international media that was here. So you see Dr. King holding a press conference on June 10th, 1964.
The day after the speech, Dr. King was arrested along with the mother of the governor of Massachusetts, Dr. Haley, and more at the Monsoon Motor Lodge, which is where the Hilton Garden now sits, simply because they were trying to integrate the restaurant.
While he was here, he wrote a letter from the St. Augustine jail. A lot of people know about the letter from the Birmingham jail, but there was a letter from the St. Augustine jail. And that letter was a cry out to rabbis who he had an acquaintance with. And so he reached out and then he got a response from Rabbi Dresner, and they came with like 16 rabbis.
The rabbis arrived by June 18th. Later that day, things took an even more dramatic turn.
The picture that you see of the acid being poured in the pool, that was June 18th. As you are walking through, you'll see there's a picture here with these rabbis being arrested. And they're basically being, citizen arrests by the manager of the hotel who's taking them and escorting them over to the police cars. And so they, in turn, wrote a letter from the St. Augustine jail about why they came. So it was the largest arrest of Jewish rabbis here that had joined the movement with Dr. King. And that was a big part of the success of the movement, is that you had people of all ethnicities that were working together to make it happen. And then the next week you have this wait-in at the beach at Anastasia Island, and it was the culmination of those things that kept St. Augustine in the national headlines. Now, since that time, a lot of things kind of like got pushed aside. So a lot of people don't know the history and the role that St. Augustine played in this. And so our job, why we want to make sure that these stories are told, is to make sure that it's not forgotten. So this year, our whole city, the city or cultural council, different organizations, we're planning a 60th anniversary commemorative celebration for Dr. King. So I hope you guys will come back.
Like you said, every single step is a step towards freedom, towards anti-segregation, towards a better tomorrow, and so many of those steps that were taken here in St. Augustine. And I just applaud all the work that you and your team are doing to preserve that, to amplify that voice and those messages.
Thank you.
I'm Jana Angel for River City Live. Brance, honestly, I can't thank you enough for taking me down to Lincolnville, introducing me to Regina. That visit was emotional, but so informative and really inspiring.
So we're going to be doing a deeper dive into Lincolnville Museum in the future, so hang tight for that. But in the meantime, I rolled back down to Flagler College to meet up with a professor who shares how St. Augustine impacted the civil rights movement, yet it has largely been overlooked. Well, a lot of people here in Jacksonville, actually around the country, do not really know how integral that played here in St. Augustine. Jacksonville, yes, but definitely here in St. Augustine. So I'm here with Dr. J. Michael Butler, and he's going to break down some of the craziness that went down during.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand the importance nationally of the St. Augustine movement. You see, St. Augustine is the campaign that was ongoing while the Civil Rights Act was working its way through Congress. And that was one of the nationally important parts of the local movement. I always say that St. Augustine is an example of how the local, state, and national movement all come together so that people at a local level, people who live still in St. Augustine, had an impact on our nation's history, big picture moving forward.
Why St. Augustine?
St. Augustine was what Dr. King called the most violent place in the South. He called it the most racist city in the South. And this is on the heels of him being in Birmingham, right? So, St. Augustine, because there was a violent white presence that opposed any signs of racial progress, and a local activist by the name of Dr. Robert Hayling, who is a dentist here, mobilized, organized young people. And they wanted the same rights and freedoms that they had seen exercised throughout the South, whether it's integrated dining counters, whether it was more city jobs for African Americans, right? St. Augustine was on the cusp of celebrating its 400th anniversary. Dr. Hayling protested that no African Americans, no local people, were involved in the planning. So when the vice president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, came here to kick off the quadricentennial celebration, Dr. Hayling and his group wanted to highlight the fact that Black St. Augustinians were being left out of the celebration process. All of that led to downtown demonstrations, subsequently the influx of the Ku Klux Klan from outside of the state and from within. And basically what happened is that St. Augustine became ground zero for why Dr. King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, wanted the Civil Rights Act to pass, and it was ground zero from what white supremacists wanted to remain unchanged. So you have here these two diametrical forces that met over the passage of what was the greatest piece of civil rights legislation this nation has ever produced.
So why does St. Augustine kind of get swept under the rug compared to Birmingham?
That's a great question. And I think what happened is that as Dr. King and SCLC, after they left St. Augustine, according to Andrew Young, he told me the organization wanted to forget about St. Augustine because they, in effect, didn't see it as a success. And they didn't see it as a success because there was no local consensus on how to move forward in the aftermath of the movement. See, what happened in St. Augustine is that the Civil Rights Act passed while Dr. King was in St. Augustine. There was no local agreement, there was no biracial committee, there was no coming together of white and black citizens on how the city would move forward as one in the aftermath of the movement. It just ended. It ended because of legislation. That's not usually how Dr. King and SCLC wanted to leave a community. They wanted some sort of consensus on how African Americans could be considered part of the community, that they could move forward together with white and black, and that there could be an example of interracial harmony. You never had that in St. Augustine. The other thing that happened is that events that occurred in Mississippi also took the national spotlight away from St. Augustine, and that was because of Freedom Summer and the disappearance of Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney, the Mississippi burning case. So there were a variety of factors that led to St. Augustine becoming the forgotten campaign of the movement. And what I will say, when people ask me about how bad St. Augustine was, Andrew Young himself told me that of all the campaigns SCLC had ever been involved in, and that's Birmingham, that's Montgomery, that's Selma, that's any campaign in Mississippi, St. Augustine is the only campaign where the SCLC spent more money on medical bills than they did legal costs. That gives you an idea of the degree of violence, the daily resistance that activists met, that common people met here in St. Augustine. And when SCLC left and the Civil Rights Act was signed, those people had to go back to living together. And I think that the ramifications of that movement are something that the city's still dealing with today. These stories have to be told so that we know who we are, warts and all, so that we can both gauge how far we come and assess how much farther we need to go to be a truly equal, equitable society.
Second mic drop. 2 times. So that one hit me in a different place because that was a lot of information that I did not know, and there was a lot of meat left on the bone, so we're going to post that full interview on rivercitylivetv.com.
Again, so much great information. Now we are going to continue with Bridges of Hope, our Martin Luther King Day special here on River City Live when we return after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Bridges of Hope, Martin Luther King Jr. Day on River City Live. Another historical nugget many have little clue about includes Fort Mose.
Now, while the fort is not directly involved in the civil rights movement, that included Dr. King, it played a significant role in another movement for the African American community.
Fort Mose is the first legally sanctioned black settlement in North America. The King of Spain decided that if anyone from the Carolinas made it down to Fort Mose and they became Catholic, worked for the Spanish in any way, carpentry, whatever special skills you had, and joined the militia, that you would be free here in St. Augustine. So they established Fort Mose, Santa Maria de Gracia de Mose.
While Fort Mose was established as a community 2 miles north of St. Augustine, it was actually built as an early warning site for St. Augustine against the British.
Fort Mose lasted a total from beginning to end, it lasted a total of about 20 years. But when the Spanish succeeded Florida to the U.S., everyone departed St. Augustine and they went to Cuba. So to find ancestors from the original Fort Mose establishment, they would be in Cuba at this time.
Before that exodus, the British attacked Fort Mose in 1740 for 30 days. Most everyone evacuated to St. Augustine. They regrouped and battled back with the aid of Native Americans and the Spanish to win the bloody Battle of Fort Mose. Dr. D. Israel shares the importance of women in the establishment of the fort.
Women were in bondage in a sense and, mistreated on plantations as they are throughout the world. But they were determined to be free. So it meant traveling over 300 miles to St. Augustine with the men. So the first group were 11 persons, I think 3 women and the rest were men. But the important thing about the history, and I'd want people to know about, was that the journey was horrendous. I mean, to think that you had to go over 300 miles, traveling at night, because they couldn't travel in the day. They had no bicycle or no Cadillac to take them around. They were barefooted. And to trench through that awful territory at night was certainly quite an accomplishment. The Native Americans were able to help them find a shorter way, and that is the beginning of the Underground Railroad.
Fort Mose Historical Society and the St. John's Cultural Council have implemented a plan to ensure that future generations have a better sense of the history of the fort by building a life-size replica.
Yeah, it's a concrete example of what it was like to build a fort and to fight the British. So that's essential, to have something visible, something concrete for people to realize, oh yeah, this is the fort. This is where women were. This is where women began to learn about different creative ways to do new foods that they learned about. And I would say the women were sort of the first entrepreneurs, because they learned to cook and they learned to sell some of their wares. So it was very
and we know
essential.
when people hear there's a fort here, they're going to want to come to see the fort. And when they come to see the fort, we're going to tell them Fort Mose's story and history.
I'm Rance Adams for River City Live.
Bringing it back to our current moment, Fort Mose has plans to make the fort an even more immersive experience, but that requires money.
That Fort Mose Jazz and Blues Festival returns to the historic state park February 8th through 17th, featuring internationally renowned artists like hip-hop artist Common, Jazz, a Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis, Keb Mo, and more.
Now, proceeds go to promote and preserve the site's very rich history, and you can get tickets at Ticketmaster.com or discoverfortmose.com.
We offer the opportunity for everyone to lift their voices when our special River City Live returns.
Jacksonville's imprint on African American history spreads long and includes the author of African American National Anthem, James Weldon Johnson.
Singing Lift Every Voice and Sing, Clifton Daniels.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
We hope you enjoyed our presentation today. We also hope you took away some nuggets that might inspire you to look back in history so we might do better for our future, Bridging Hope.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached a message of equality and inclusion, which is something at River City Live we strive for every day. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on River City Live.